The latest White House National Security Advisor is officially on the job, the third in 15 months if you're keeping score at home. And with confrontations boiling over with Syria and Russia, John Bolton has his work cut out for him. And then there's China, among the latest pieces in the chess, or is it checkers game, that is Donald Trump's foreign policy. Whatever it is, our stock markets have been plunging thanks in large part to the president's threat to impose tariffs on a total of $150 billion of Chinese goods. Then literally yesterday, Trump tweeted, "President Xi and I will always be friends. Great future for both countries." And today, this.
China has been taking advantage of the United States for many years.
But they're great friends. He also referred to trade with China as stupid trade on Twitter this morning. So that relationship's on a clear path. And then there's Syria, a country about which the president came into office saying this.
"I'm going to bomb the out of them." It's true. I don't care.
Then this past Tuesday on Syria, this.
"I want to get out. I want to bring our troops back home. I want to start rebuilding our nation. It's time to come back home." And we're thinking about that very seriously.
A day later, the White House said its troops plan to stay in Syria. And then over the weekend, as you know, a Damascus suburb was attacked with chemical weapons, which most believe Bashar al-Assad was behind. Once again, the president turned today.
I'd like to begin by condemning the heinous attack on innocent Syrians with banned chemical weapons. It was an atrocious attack. It was horrible. We're talking about humanity. And it can't be allowed to happen.
He went on to say he and his military advisors will be making decisions about next steps in the next couple of days. But perhaps the most dramatic change of them all was this one, when a reporter asked today if Russian President Vladimir Putin might be responsible for the attack.
He may, yeah, he may. Everybody's going to pay a price. He will, everybody will.
Joining me are Carol Saivetz. She's senior advisor at MIT's Security Studies program. Nice to see you. Along with Middle East and North Africa consultant Nasser Weddady. It's good to see you, Nasser, too. Can I try to take Syria as a microcosm of what at least I see as Trump's confusing foreign policy? And if I'm off base, either of you can correct me. So today's hinting at military force, days after recently talking about getting out. Is this a symptom of indecision or confusion, or just reacting to changing events, Carol?
I think it's the latter. I actually would agree with John McCain, who alleged yesterday, I guess it was, that Trump actually had facilitated the attack. I mean, not directly, obviously, but by saying that we were going to pull out and we were going to bring our forces home and we would leave Syria to everybody else, he emboldened Assad, I think, to make the attack.
McCain went even further and said this is almost exactly like what happened a year ago
Right.
when Donald Trump said removing Assad was not a priority,
Right.
and that precipitated the attack. Carol seems to think there may be a method to Trump's madness or the changing.
I don't think I said that.
Well, but I mean, you
Yeah.
say it's reacting to
Right.
events rather than just confusion and decision. Which do
I
you
would
think
add
it is?
to it that there's also miscommunication, which is interesting
What do you
about Donald Trump. For example, the incident about wanting to withdraw the troops is, according to my sources in Washington, I talked to people in the White House, and my understanding of it is that actually what the president meant could be probably told in the following metaphor. He asked the advisors, make me an omelet, don't break any eggs, don't use any oil, and don't heat it up too much, and by the way, have someone else pay for it. Which is very much, interestingly, the same Syria policy that he inherited from President Obama. And that's kind of quirky because he's basically repeating the same thing.
Right.
I want to get to, can I get to Obama just in about
Sure.
a second? So if I misrepresented you about a second ago, how would you describe
I'm
the
not sure
president's
there's a
treatment?
method. I think what I objected to was your use of the word method. I think that he is highly reactive, and I think that he doesn't understand the consequences either of his words and or of policies in one sphere and how they have an impact on other spheres that are of great concern to the United States.
What do you think he's going to do? He said in that statement within 24 to 40 hours, 48 hours, it will become clear what we intend to do in response.
I think he has to do something.
Like he did last year?
Well, that's the question. If he does last year, it's a pinprick. He let them know ahead of time. There was a great cartoon that circulated on the Internet last year of Putin and Assad sitting on a bench going like this, you know, Trump's on the phone. Is such and such a time the best time for him to attack? I think it has to be more than that because otherwise all he's doing is replicating
What is more
everything.
than that?
I don't know. And it frightens me.
You're nodding in agreement.
I am nodding in agreement, and I wanted to add that basically what is happening with the president, just as the former one, we basically talked ourselves out of options in Syria through design, through calculations, and what we're left with right now is the following. The president, this one and the former one, decided that what matters in Syria for the United States is defeating ISIS. That Bashar al-Assad, the difference between basically the Trump administration and the Obama administration is that the Obama administration was very good with the vocabulary and disguising what they really wanted with Assad, which is they were not concerned with him leaving, whereas Trump came out and said it publicly. So what is going to happen tomorrow or 24 hours, whatever they're going to decide, is going to be probably a version of what happened last time. They're going to look for whatever targets that do not involve the risk of hitting any Russians, that will not undermine Bashar al-Assad in any way.
So a symbolic strike.
It's going to be a symbolic strike.
You know, Nasser, a few times you've mentioned Barack Obama, so now's our time. This is the thing that I'm sure everybody watching remembers from President Obama. Here it is.
A red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized. We have communicated in no uncertain terms with every player in the region that that's a red line for us and that there would be enormous consequences.
And people realize that there were not. Gary Kasparov, interestingly, is saying a variation of what you're saying in a tweet. He said it's awkward. He played chess and he's a conservative foreign policy thinker now. It's awkward for Obama and Trump fans to admit their foreign policies are so similar in practice, especially in Syria, despite their wildly differing rhetoric and motives. It's America in retreat as authoritarians expand and murder. That's essentially your position on this, yes?
He was actually retweeting me when he said that. But like that's what happened. And unfortunately, whether we like it or not, is that in terms of Syria, in terms of Bashar al-Assad, the decision to let Bashar al-Assad was taken a long time ago, sometime between 2012 and 2013, by the Obama administration.
You know, there's a new sheriff, for lack of a better expression, in town. John Bolton, as I said, started today.
Right.
I was reading an op-ed he wrote in 2015 about Syria today, in which he says we can't walk away from Syria as we did from Iraq. So how does that factor in what Donald Trump allegedly is thinking?
Right. I think that Trump is aware of that. I think that having criticized how we left Iraq and not doing enough at the time, that he has to be careful not to follow in Obama's footsteps.
Trump didn't know that 2 weeks ago when he said, or a week ago,
well,
when he said, I want to withdraw the troops?
According to all the reports, he surprised all his military, advisors and everything else with that statement. So I think that they're aware of it. Whether or not they can persuade him is another question.
Should I be nervous about John Bolton? I mean, not only has he talked in the past from time to time about bombing Syria, add North Korea to the list,
and
add Iran to the list. I know it's very different when you're a free-range player as opposed to an advisor to the president. Or is it that different? You have an odd smile on your face.
Yeah, can I say something that people usually don't say on TV, which is what I really think? I'm not worried at all.
Why are you not worried at all?
Because President Trump is a non-interventionist guy. And at the end of the day, he is, let's call things by their name, he is a populist, and he's an inward-looking populist who's interested mostly in the base here in the United States.
So why did he pick the most hawk-like person to be his national security advisor?
But I also, can I interrupt? Sure, I also don't understand. I mean, Bolton is on record as writing the justification for attacking North Korea. He wants to rip up the Iran deal. I don't understand how this is a non-interventionist policy. Now, whether he and Trump find themselves at loggerheads or whether he becomes the whisperer sort of behind the throne, I mean, I'm concerned both about the Iran deal and the implications for what happens in Syria and also for the negotiations, if there are any, with North Korea.
Give it the last 15 seconds.
H.R. McMaster was as hawkish on some of these issues. Ultimately, he was overruled by the president. I don't think that President Trump, for all my criticism of his rather reality TV style of leadership, I don't think that he will start a war, at least consciously. And
consciously is the important part, I think.
Carol, good to see you. Thank you so much, Nasser. Thanks for your thoughts.
Thank you for having me.
Good to see you both.